Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be with you here today. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you, and I thought what I'd visit about a little bit is what's happened over the last year. Of course, we've all experienced it, and it's been a year like none other. I was talking to some of my friends of mine and said, in 20 years when they have retro costume parties, like dress up like this decade, that everyone will be pulling out the masks. And won't that be a good day when that's something we only do when we want to, not because we need to and we have to. So Team Up really is an important event for the city and area around Tomball. Do so many good things for people in need, whether it's through the food pantry or the retail shop or just the help they give to people who have to pay their bills, utilities and rent, etc. And so this is an opportunity today to reach out and do good things for your community. And thanks again for being here. Well, it was March 1st. I remember the day because a water main broke the day before in Houston, and we thought, oh boy, this is a rough day. Little did we know. And then the day that really was the biggest day was the day in which the NBA season was canceled and the rodeo shut down. That was March 16th. And that set off the panic buying that occurred and really kind of hasn't stopped since. The good news is it looks like we're on the backside of COVID-19 now, but through it all, we went through a lot of learning. And believe me, there was no manual for us to look at. Sometimes, okay, not sometimes, a lot of the time, we made it up as we went along because we had never experienced some of these issues that we faced. Let's just take masks, for instance. The CDC initially said, we don't think people need to wear masks. We thought early on we were going to need them, so we began to try to order them out of Asia because with the demand for PPE for hospitals, there were none to be bought domestically. And 4 different times, our order of 1 million masks was bought out from under us by someone who was willing to pay more. On the 5th time, it finally shipped, and all of us were in a room when we heard that the plane landed in Los Angeles. And we were so happy. There was jubilation because we've been working on this for about 2 weeks. And then we got a call that said that Customs had detained our masks, confiscated them, and was going to reallocate them both to federal employees and to frontline workers like in hospitals. Well, clearly they are, but we kind of thought that grocery workers were frontline too. And our buyer at that time, who's responsible for purchasing supplies, she looked at us and she said, I feel so defeated. And we all did. Well, our vice president of loss prevention, he said, I know somebody who works for the FBI in LA. Let me see if I can get them involved. And so he called out, he got the masks released, and we had chartered a plane and sent it out to California so that we could get them back and get them distributed quickly. And we were like shouting, get them on the plane, get them on the plane. And as soon as we heard that the plane was in the air, we were so happy and we were so excited. From the get-go, we really had a 2-pronged strategy at HEB. The first was have our employees, whom we call partners, and our customers feel safe shopping in our stores. So that meant sanitizing carts, sanitizing common work areas and areas that people would touch, such as freezer doors and check stand keypads, etc., and making sure that everyone was in a mask. The second thing that we worked on was working hard to make sure that we had supply of groceries in our stores, and sometimes that was hard. An example would be with toilet paper, which was such an interesting phenomenon. But if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with the bottom of the triangle being things like food and shelter, well, I guess we could add toilet paper onto that. But another way to think about this is that if you were working for 8 hours a day, there was a 1/3 chance you were going to go to the restroom at work. And so what happened was a lot of those occasions shifted to home, and the demand went up at home. So when we couldn't get toilet paper, and believe me, you literally could have laid down on our shelving in the aisle because there was none, as they said on Seinfeld, there was not a square to spare. And so what we did was we found a manufacturer in Mexico who made a chamomile scented toilet paper. Now it happened to be their worst seller. That's why they had a lot of it. But the old motto goes, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And when there's no toilet paper, you know what? Chamomile toilet paper is pretty popular. And we were able to get truckloads of this in, and boy, were our stores and customers happy that we had it, until we got some other toilet paper in. And then my stores were saying, what do you want me to do with all this chamomile scented toilet paper? Well, there was another run on toilet paper later, and we eventually sold it all out. But this just shows the kind of ingenuity and perseverance that our 200 buyers went to try to find products that we could get on our shelves. You know, you have to look hard to see where there's been good news. But sometimes if you look hard enough, you find it. For instance, coronavirus has been good for dog pounds, right? There aren't necessarily any dogs to be adopted. So that's been a good thing. When we had no meat to sell at one point, we were able to get prime and Wagyu beef that normally is sold in upscale steakhouses because we figured any meat, even if it's expensive, is good and better than having no meat. And so we sent that out to our stores, and the crazy thing was we found out that stores, even in some middle income and lower income areas, like prime and Wagyu beef. And so today we continue to stock and carry that, and that was something we never would have realized. And obviously, I'll just speak for myself. I used to travel 3 or 4 days a week. Now all I do is in and out day commutes out of Houston, and so I'm getting to spend more time with my family and friends. People have cooked a lot. We certainly saw that during the early days of the pandemic. We were out of yeast for about 4 weeks. And I look, over a 30-year career at H-E-B, I've spent 0 time thinking about yeast until the coronavirus kicked off and everybody decided, I don't have anything to do, so I'll bake something. My own daughter began baking bread every week until I finally told her, if you don't stop with the bread, I'm going to have to buy a big new belt. Well, all of this certainly has been at times frustrating, at times celebratory when we've been able to find solutions, but most of all, it's been a trudge. And lots of folks, my wife included, would say, do you think this is ever going to end? I mean, am I always going to have to wear a mask? And I think the answer for us is we've just looked at how can we get through this week. We pulled our focus in, and once we get to next Sunday, and then Monday starts as we take on the next. And we just do the absolute best job that we can. What I've been impressed with at H-E-B is how many of our employees have continued to come to work even when they sensed some level of danger. Now, the good news is that we've contact traced those employees who work for us who have contracted coronavirus. Almost every case of it has come from activities outside of work when they might not have worn a mask. So they have been relatively safe, and our absenteeism has been low. But what I have been impressed with is how folks have stepped up and put in extra time and effort to make sure that we could feed Texans. And I think what this boils back to is everybody wants to make a difference. You know, when I look back at Hurricane Harvey, which was the last quasi-similar situation to this, when our stores were gutted after Hurricane Harvey, we put out a call to employees across the company and said, we need help in Houston and along the Gulf Coast. And 2,000 partners got in cars, 4 to a car, and began to drive once the eye of the hurricane passed through, so that those employees who had to stay at home and work on their homes could, and someone else stepped up. And they didn't have to do this. And subsequent to that, when we have anniversary lunches for employees who've worked 20 or 25 years, they reflect on this time as some of their favorite, although the work was hard and they worked a lot of hours and sometimes they slept on somebody's couch. But it boils down to, inherently, people want the opportunity to make a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're a checker or if you're a store manager or if you're me, that when you have the opportunity to step up because other people need you and they're going to rely on you, that you feel good about being able to make a contribution. We try to bake that into the culture at H-E-B. We donate 5% of our pre-tax earnings to charity every year. Last year we donated 10% because communities were really in need. If you invest in your community, you make it a better place for others and yourself to live. And of course at H-E-B, then maybe people might buy a few more groceries along the way too. But that's similar to what we're talking about today with Team Up, is that here's an opportunity for folks to be able to step up and make a difference for those who are in need. We've seen, as you look at unemployment rates, not just in the United States, but specifically in the greater Houston area, because of the combination of coronavirus and the dip in oil prices, that we lost 200,000 jobs in the greater Houston area. And with unemployment brings uncertainty. With sickness, if your primary breadwinner has been sick and can't go to work, that about half of all households can't afford to miss a paycheck and go in need. So that's where groups like Teams step up to help each other. But for us, we have an opportunity to step up and help Team. And I think it's a great example, by you being here today, of the good that can be done if we choose to help. I always talk about if you can, then you must. And so part of what I earn, I invest back into my community to make a better place. So think about doing the same time. You know, HEB is an amazing place. I've worked here for 30 years. I've had so many incredible experiences. I was lucky enough to do ads with football players and baseball players. And people will say, how much fun is that? Like, I pinch myself to think that I get paid to do some of the things that I get to do. I'm super blessed, but I also know that some people struggle at different points in times in their life, and that's why it's important for us to step up. So thanks for coming to this. Think about helping team. Make a difference in your community, and remember this, no store does more than my HEB.